Hey guys, this is Joel with Quarantine Marine, and we're coming to you now from my house here in Florida. And this is my own personal display tank. It's a 300-gallon tank, and these are my personal fish collection. I've had all of these fish now for several years, with the exception of a pair of wild-caught clowns that I'll show you in a minute. They're over there in the corner. I've had those guys for about 7 or 8 months. So the reason I'm making this video is because I'm actually having an issue with my fish that I wanted to document the process, the treatment process, and hopefully help someone else out, and maybe even get some advice from the all of you guys as to what you think, what you would recommend doing in this situation. Because even though I sell quarantined fish, I don't have all the answers. I did speak to Humble Fish yesterday, and we kind of came up with a plan, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But first, let me give you a little bit of history on this tank and these fish. So this tank I've had set up now for quite a few years at my old house as a reef tank, and it was always bare bottom, but it had like a regular piles of rocks in the old tank. And when I moved it to here, I redid the rock work BRS style with that NSA aquascaping. So I broke up all these rocks and glued them together to create these structures. And I'm going to make a couple more structures, and I might do a video on that if you guys want, to show you how I do it. But it was kind of a fun process. But anyway, that's not what this video is about. So these fish I've had for quite a while, and the angelfish, I think I got him when it was 3 or 4 inches long, and now you can see it's 7 or 8 inches long, plus those streamers. And all the other fish too I've had for quite a while. I tend to buy fish when they're small and let them grow up. And a couple of years ago, before I started selling quarantine fish, I added a trio. And by the way, all these fish have been quarantined, treated with copper in the standard protocol with Metro, Prazi, etc. And a couple of years ago, I added a trio of Bimac Anthias to this tank, and they were quarantined as well. But I believe what happened is Uranema slipped through somehow. And anyway, those Anthias succumbed to the Uranema relatively quickly. I think within a few days. I think all 3 of them had died, and there really wasn't anything I could do at that point. And of course, once you have Uranema in the tank, there's really not a whole lot you can do short of breaking the entire tank down, sterilizing, and starting over. Now, that's not to say you're completely screwed, because as you can see, and as I already said, I've had all these fish for many years. So all these fish that you see here survived, with having Uranema in the tank for all those years, and they've been relatively unaffected. Over the years, I would notice that they would get some spots on their fins once in a while, and I shouldn't even say spots. It was more like smudges, or even a little bit of tattered fins, some fin damage. So not spots like ick, because you say spots, we think of ick, right? Or velvet. That's not what this presented as. And I really never had a concern that there was ick or velvet in this tank, based on what I was seeing. So I thought it was symptoms of Uranema, or it could possibly be flukes as well. And I never specifically treated for anything, because again, it really didn't seem to affect the fish that much. It would kind of come and go, and when it came, it really wasn't that much. I mean, it was just a couple little spots here and there, but not a big deal. And so I didn't really do anything about it. And then when I moved and we were going to move this tank, I said, well, here's my chance. Because at the same time I didn't do anything about it, I also was afraid to add any fish to the tank, because I didn't want to cause an outbreak, or cause a new fish to die, because they didn't have the immunity possibly to whatever it is that it was in the tank, most likely Uranema. So anyway, when I moved the tank, I said, well, here's my chance. I can try to get rid of whatever this is and start over, basically. And that's basically what I did. So when I moved the tank was allowed to dry out. I didn't wipe it down with bleach or anything, but it dried out completely for several days. And all the plumbing is new. All the pumps were given vinegar baths, and the sump, all that stuff is new. So I thought that, oh, and when I set the tank up, I also ran fresh water through the whole tank for several days, probably about a week actually, because I had some leaks with a bulkhead, and I wanted to make sure that I had all the leaks taken care of before I put salt in the tank. And so it took me a while to figure out that bulkhead, and it's still not quite figured out. But anyway, I decided it's about time I put salt in the tank, so I did. So anyway, I think with all those measures, that anything that might have been in the tank was probably eradicated. And in the meantime, the fish were in quarantine tanks, and I treated them with the General Cure Metro protocol, which is basically General Cure on day 1. General Cure contains Metro and Prazi. It's used to treat flukes, urinema, brook, things like that. And then Metro on days 3 and 5, General Cure again on day 7, and then Metro day 9 and 11, and then I did General Cure again day 13. And I think I did another couple Metro treatments because they were in quarantine for about 3 weeks. And I just continued to dose the medications the entire time. So at the end of that process, the angelfish and the Hyniacus had a little bit of fin damage, which I attributed to lymph or possibly just being in, a quarantine tank for a few weeks. They're larger fish, and they don't want to be in a 40-gallon breeder when they're used to this big 300-gallon tank. So I thought it was just stress related and possibly lymph, which is a viral issue, which can come and go. Usually comes about when the water quality is not great, or nutrition's not great, or there's stress. And so I figured it would clear up once they were back in the display tank. What ended up happening though is some of the symptoms got worse, and I noticed the tanes started to come down with symptoms. So I'm gonna get in here now and try to show you what I'm talking about. And I think these are flukes. They really appear to be flukes, as you can see on the Hyniacus here. If you can see his fins, I know it's gonna be difficult to see on the video, but he's got these semi-transparent spots on his fins. They really don't present as ick or velvet. They're too transparent and too flat. They're not raised bumps, they're just kind of flat on his fins. And they've gotten a little bit worse over the last couple weeks that they've been in this tank. The angelfish had them too on his fins, and I think he still does a little bit there. You can kind of see the edges of his pectoral fins are maybe a little bit frayed. And then, let's see, the Tomini tane, he has them as well. Gonna be hard to see because he's too far away. The purple tane's a bit of an anomaly because he's the only one that's showing what almost looks to be ick. And if you showed me the purple tane and I didn't know any history on him, I would say he has ick, but I can't imagine that he does based on, what I know of them. But yeah, and I know you're not gonna be able to see it on the video, but the purple tane does have these white dots that do present more like ick. But they could also be fluke. And actually, when I just saw him now, I don't know if you guys could see it in the video, but what I just saw now does look more like flukes than ick. And then the Coral Beauty, same thing. Gonna be hard to see, I know. And then the Scopus tane, same thing. I think you can see the spots were pretty good there on the Scopus tane just a second ago. The clowns seem to be unaffected, so I don't think that it's brook, because I think the clowns would be completely taken out if it was brook. So I talked to Humble Fish, Bobby, yesterday, came up with a plan. And before I did that, by the way, I treated the tank with Prazi on Wednesday, and today is Saturday. So it's been a few days since the Prazi treatment. The fish look worse today than they did on Wednesday. So, in speaking with Bobby, he recommended maybe that we try hypo. And so that's what I'm doing now. I've already started drain the tank down a little ways, and I'm adding fresh water from the RODI unit right here. I couldn't find a good calculator online to figure out how many gallons of water I need to remove and replace, but so I'm just gonna kind of wing this. I took out some, I'm gonna add some. It obviously goes in really slow, so I'll be able to measure the salinity as it goes in. And once I hit 1.009, I know that we're good, and I can adjust the water levels and things at that point. And then we're gonna try to keep it. It shouldn't be a problem keeping it at 1.009 for the duration, because I've got an ATO And so it should be, you know, this, and it's such a large volume of water that it should remain pretty stable. The one thing we're gonna have to check on is the pH, because when you treat with hypo, the pH tends to drop, and so we might have to do some things to raise the pH, which I'll discuss in a later video when that becomes an issue. The other thing is, so as far as the treatment protocol for flukes, normally you just treat with hypo for about 7 days, and it'll take care of the flukes during that time, as well as their eggs. Here though, you know, we're gonna see what they look like after 7 days. We'll probably extend it out. It's a treatment that's pretty well tolerated by the fish in most cases. And so as long as the fish are tolerating it pretty well, if they're looking better, you know, we'll make a decision if we want to continue it, because just in case there is ick in this tank, which I cannot believe there would be, but just in case there is, we might continue the hyposalinity treatment through the 30 or 45 day mark, again, if the fish are tolerating it well, and if we think there's a reason to do that. So that's where we stand right now. I'm trying to think if there was anything else I had wanted to mention to you guys. And this has been a little bit perplexing to me because I just haven't really had a tough case of flukes before, which is, you know, a bit surprising given the number of fish that I treat that have been resistant to the prazi. But here it looks like I might, you know, my own tank might have some prazi resistant flukes. And I kind of hope that's all it is flukes, but and not something weird. But if we have to take a more aggressive approach, you know, that is an option that's on the table. We can either remove these rocks to basically make this one big quarantine tank. The way that I built these rock structures, it's pretty easy to remove them actually. And you know, if we had to do that, we could. I'd prefer, you know, I really don't want to do that. But in, you know, worst case scenario, we could remove the rocks, or I could remove the rocks and then catch these fish and get them back into quarantine tanks. But then the problem is, you know, I'm still stuck with whatever is in my display tank, and whether, you know, the question of whether it will be eradicated with a fallow period, I'm not sure. So that's where we stand, and I just wanted to kind of make this video so that you guys could follow along if you want, and see what we end up doing here, and what the results are. And like I said, I'm really hoping that we figure this out, because I don't want to lose these fish, and of course I want to get this tank, you know, up and, you know, running. I want to start adding my corals to it, and in fact this tank is going to be pretty simple. It's going to be just a softy tank, I think, with pretty much all mushroom corals. One of the first tanks I ever saw 20 years ago when I first got in this hobby was nothing but mushrooms, and I thought it was really cool. And so I think I might try to replicate that here. I'm just gonna try to show you these fish again. The Hyneacus really shows what I'm talking about. I think you guys are gonna see that there. One other sign that the fish are sick is that the hippo, or not the hippo, the powder blue has been swimming into that gyre in the back of the tank quite frequently. I'm not sure if you guys saw him do that at all in the video. He probably did, but that's the only other symptom that I'm showing. And he actually scratches once in a while, and I saw he does have this ring on his tail on the other side right there. It's gonna be hard to see, but I noticed that yesterday. It actually looks a little better today, but again, you know, kind of all classic signs of flukes. So I think that's probably what we're dealing with here. So we'll see if hypo works, and then you know, again, I'm gonna update you guys with more videos as we go along in this process. Also, in the other videos, I'll probably tell you a little bit more about the tank and, you know, what's going on underneath, how I built these panels for the stand, because I think they're kind of cool. And then eventually I think I'll take you on a tour of the fish room out in the garage. However, as I said earlier, I just moved here, so I just got reset up out there, and it's not pretty right now. It's just sort of, you know, just good enough for me to be able to take some orders and get some orders out for you guys that are wanting fish. So anyway, stay tuned for more if you're interested, and I'll see you next time.